This is The World Today. Hello and thank you for joining us. I am Peninah, Karibe. Iran says an agreement with Oman on new arrangements for commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz is close to being finalized. The deal is seen as giving Tehran control of the strait, which the U.S. has repeatedly rejected.
The latest situation is that almost all of the topics are under discussion. The map, the transit routes, the entering and exiting of maritime traffic, and those bilateral agreements with Oman. Because it's not just a map, these fundamental agreements with Oman have mostly been completed, meaning we have made significant progress in our discussions with Oman, and this progress is on the verge of being finalized.
The deal calls for the temporary northern and southern routes in the strait to be replaced by a new one which passes through Tehran's territorial waters for 2 to 4 months. Iran's deputy foreign minister says the potential agreement does not mean the strait will be reopened completely. Garibabadi also rejected U.S. claims of negotiations with Iran, but he says Tehran has received word from Washington of its readiness to return to commitments under the MOU signed in June. Aksan Kivani has more details from Yazid.
And now here's the crucial twist. Even if Iran and Oman signed that agreement on managing traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, we cannot expect it to automatically reopen. Iran's state TV has quoted an informed source saying the deal is strictly bilateral and has nothing to do with the U.S. The source adds, if U.S. violations continue, the strait will not reopen even with an Iran-Oman agreement. We should wait and see if Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi travels to Islamabad in the coming days. That could clarify significantly. But even if the strait fully reopens, we then face the big issues, uranium, missiles, proxies, and that's where it gets complicated. Iran believes that time is on its side, in fact, so they're bracing for long and tough talks. This is a direct challenge, in fact, to what President Trump and his administration keep insisting. Tehran is painting the White House as a bluffing actor, one that talks tough but always pulls back at the last moment. U.S. officials have repeatedly threatened massive strikes on Iran, and to walk those back, they have mentioned mediation or pressure from Arab states in the region. Iran's reading is clear. They see it as weakness. So they're projecting total defiance, signaling these threats don't scare them. The latest example comes from Ebrahim Azizi, head of Iran's Parliamentary National Security Commission. He warns the U.S. will not only be pushed out of the region, but from every country that hosts American bases. He says Washington will soon be so stretched it will have to use all its base resources just to defend its own borders.
U.S. President Donald Trump says there was an all-day negotiation on Tuesday with Iran. He says the talks were positive while threatening to hit Iran really hard if there was no deal reached. Tehran has denied any talks with the U.S. Nick Harper has more from Washington.
The U.S. contradicting Iran, but also U.S. officials seemingly contradicting themselves. Donald Trump was very clear on Monday. He thought that the talks were taking place between the US and Iran. Iran has pushed back on that. But his top officials have doubled down, saying that talks are taking place. But all of it really begs the question, because this is what we often see from the Trump administration, is it true? Because they often say a deal is being done, talks are taking place, only for the Iranians to contradict them. But remember, Donald Trump has warned that really this is the last chance for Iran to do a deal, and he has threatened them with decapitation if they don't come through with a deal that reopens the strait. And we're continuing to hear more reports suggesting that the Pentagon is really in serious difficulty when it comes to that stockpile of ammunition. Some of the latest reporting coming from CNN suggesting that the Pentagon has now used up 80% of their interceptor missiles that are used in the THAAD defense systems. Now, that's bad news for the United States, but it's also bad news for other Gulf nations who rely on that US-made technology in defending their own countries. And they're worried that if Iran continues to send missile and drone strikes, if they can't get the weaponry from the US, those drones and missiles might get through the defences and hit their territory. That is a concern for the Pentagon. It has an impact on the US military, it has an impact on Gulf nations, but it could also, remember, have an impact on voter sentiment here in the United States. We're inching towards the midterms in November, and we already know poll after poll shows that the majority of Americans are against this conflict and very worried that after Donald Trump said it would only last 4 to 6 weeks, it's now dragging on almost to the 5-month mark.
The city of Hiroshima has marked the 81st anniversary of the US atomic bombing that killed tens of thousands of people and led to Imperial Japan's surrender in World War II. Thursday's commemoration comes amid concern over the Japanese government's remilitarization and shift from its pacifist constitution. Since 1967, Japan has upheld its 3 non-nuclear principles, but under Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, calls to revise the principles, including the ban on introducing nuclear weapons into Japan, have grown, sparking protests and criticism among Japanese civil society groups. Najib Alkash has more from Hiroshima.
Well, Hiroshima has always been a focal center for peace activism due to its symbolic place in Japanese and actually world history. But being here today for the 81st anniversary of the atomic bomb, we feel that tension is notably high. Perhaps that is due to the recent political moves by the Japanese government, which were perceived, especially here in Hiroshima, as a threat to pacifism. Many activists and demonstrators we talked to today actually expressed their strong feelings in this regard.
In my opinion, 76% is a surprisingly low figure. It should be in the 80s or 90s. Japan is the only victim of nuclear weapons in the world, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and we should never allow a third incident to happen.
I heard that 76% of Japanese people support upholding the 3 anti-nuclear principles, and I think that poll is very important. I firmly believe that the 3 principles of not possessing, not manufacturing, and not allowing nuclear weapons on Japanese soil are in line with the Japanese Constitution and should be protected.
In old times, there were leaders who asserted that Japan does not go to war or any related activities, but current leaders are starting to export weapons and they want to make an industry out of it. I think that true global leaders would stop such things.
The gap between different speeches delivered here today also stood out. While everyone did emphasize the importance of world peace, Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi described the current security situation as difficult and requiring firm commitment. Whereas, for example, we saw Norihiko Hachijo, the head of the Hiroshima City Council, and other Hiroshima officials expressing their unwavering opposition to nuclear weapons and their rejection of war as an absolute principle. Najib Alkash, CGTN, Hiroshima.
Europe faces a brutal, extreme, heat-fueled wildfire season this year. The European Union's Emergency Response Coordination Centre has tallied twice the usual number of wildfires across the continent. They warn overstretched emergency resources need to be mobilised faster for future climate-related disasters. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
An unprecedented level of destruction. French firefighters near Bordeaux continue to do battle with a blaze that scorched over 40,000 hectares of land. That's 4 times the size of Paris. Help has been arriving. The European Union has provided more than 10 planes and helicopters, with the promise of more resources if needed.
France was dealing with another fires in different areas of the country, especially in the southeast. For this reason, the area capacity of France was involved in other fires.
The European Union's emergency response gathers resources from across the bloc's 27 member states, as well as 10 partnering nations. Mapping from the Copernicus satellite service is also helping crews on the ground. It's an operation orchestrated here in Brussels. Faced with multiple wildfires across the continent, officials tell me a quick recovery of resources is vital to be ready for the next crisis.
The resources is not coming for the town beside, it's coming for another country. Then takes time to prepare all the crew, to prepare all the aerial resources to be deployed, and for this reason it takes at least 1 day.
But resources are under increasing strain. Roughly 1,200 fires have been reported across Europe so far this year. Officials say that's twice as many compared to the annual average. Wildfires have scorched more than 250,000 hectares of land this year. That's about the size of Luxembourg. EU officials say they must adapt quicker to keep pace with a changing climate. The current fires raging in southwest France have gotten to the gates of Bordeaux, according to the city's mayor. EU officials tell me dealing with such fires so close to major urban areas has presented fresh challenges.
If you need to combine to protecting people, thinking about the evacuations plans, thinking about looking how for example, the emission of CO2 can affect this. So this is something that is new, and definitely something that we will be looking at this, how to better prepare for the next season.
Europe is warming faster than any other continent, with wildfires only expected to intensify. Those tasked with coordinating the response are feeling the heat. William Denslow, CGTN, Brussels.
5 secretary bird chicks have hatched at Chester Zoo in Cheshire, England. Conservationists are calling this a major breakthrough for the conservation of one of Africa's rarest birds of prey. The zoo is one of only a handful in the UK caring for these birds. Secretary birds have been under pressure from the loss of African grasslands to agriculture and urban development. The species was classed as endangered in 2020. According to Chester Zoo, as few as 6,700 may remain in the wild. For the new hatchlings, zookeepers hand-reared the first 2 chicks before the parents successfully raised the subsequent 3. And that's where we leave it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from around the continent and Africa Live. I'll see you shortly. Thanks for watching. The WHO chief ends the visit to DRC and calls for urgent action as Ebola outbreak escalates. We examine how renewed Houthi attacks in the Red Sea are threatening East Africa's shipping supply chain. And we'll look at how Nigeria's military expansion will help bolster security. This is Africa Live. A warm welcome to the program. I am Peninah Karibe. Let's have a look at other stories coming up this hour. In business, Kenya's Nairobi Securities Exchange to create East Africa's first AI stocks-focused ETF. In sports, FIFA apologizes and rallies behind besieged President Gianni Infantino after crisis meeting in Morocco. We begin with our ongoing coverage of the Ebola outbreak. The number of confirmed cases in the Democratic Republic of Congo has increased to over 3,900, including more than 1,800 deaths, according to the latest government data. This comes as the head of the World Health Organization concludes a visit to the country. Tedros Ghebreyesus visited Kinshasa to help mobilize funding and strengthen government response. Health officials warn that urgent international support is needed to contain the deadly Bundibujo strain. The virus has spread to 5 Congolese provinces, and the World Health Organization says the outbreak is now beyond the capacity of the current response. Our correspondent Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
These two senior officials of these international bodies have called for a massive scale-up of all the pillars of the Ebola response, from infection prevention control, laboratory testing, surveillance, safe and dignified burials, and community engagement, which the Director General of the World Health Organization says is very important in this fight against Ebola. He says that people have to be working very closely with health workers, because over the past couple of months, we have seen a lot of hostility, people saying the disease does not exist. They have been keeping their patients at home, and those who are taken to health facilities are only taken there when the disease has reached an advanced stage. So they're saying when people are, convinced about the existence of this disease, then and only then will this disease be brought to an end. So they're saying to do all that, they'll need a lot of funding. They have launched an urgent appeal for funding from international partners, donors, and well-wishers. And we're seeing the United States government has already said that they will provide an additional $242 million towards this Ebola response. And so that is what they have said. They have urged the DRC government to show strong leadership in dealing with this outbreak that has spread rapidly and is now described as the world's second largest on record.
Meanwhile, in the Congolese city of Beni, local officials and residents have launched an Ebola awareness campaign to help fight the growing outbreak. CGTN Sophia Shemechero has more.
Dozens of motorcycle taxi drivers rode through the streets of Beni in a caravan displaying public health messages and illustrations on how to combat the ongoing Ebola outbreak. Beni was one of the epicenters of the 2018 to 2020 epidemic, recording over 700 Ebola cases according to the World Health Organization, and is also an active hotspot in the current outbreak. Members of the community say they are actively taking charge of the public health response, drawing lessons from past tragedy.
I tell you that in 2018 we lost several members of our families and acquaintances. So dear population of Beni, together let us fight against the Ebola virus and let us not oppose this disease. Resistance cost us dearly.
I am setting out to raise awareness among the population of Beni so that they no longer fall into the mistakes of the past. I am sacrificing myself to raise awareness among the population, even if they judge me for everything. I will accept it all, but I'm saving lives.
Officials say community engagement remains critical as many new cases continue to emerge.
Our city is facing a resurgence of this dangerous disease which threatens the health, safety, and well-being of our communities. This situation demands commitment and responsibility from each of us.
The initiative comes as authorities intensify efforts to contain the outbreak, which continues to spread across eastern provinces. Sophia Shemechero, CGTN.
Renewed missile and drone attacks by Houthi forces in the Red Sea are once again threatening one of the world's most vital shipping lanes, as the group expands its targets to include any commercial vessels loading or unloading at Saudi ports. Fears are mounting across East Africa. Countries like Kenya, Uganda and Rwanda rely heavily on the Bab el-Mandeb Strait for fuel, food and manufactured goods. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy reports on what this means for prices at the pump and household budgets.
With cargo ships under threat, global shipping lines are taking action to protect their vessels and crews. Major carriers are reportedly diverting ships around the southern tip of Africa via the Cape of Good Hope. Shipping agents say that detour adds up to 2 weeks of travel time, driving up fuel costs and pushing shipping insurance premiums higher.
You find that the ships have taken longer than they would have under normal circumstances, and this means that the charter fees have increased. We've got an issue of insurances, and we've got now recently we have got a lot of surge in piracy attacks, whereby pirates are attacking the ships and taking advantage of the ships hovering around this part of the world.
Under normal conditions, the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait handle approximately 12% of total global maritime trade volume. But ongoing geopolitical disruptions and security threats have kept transit volumes structurally low this year.
And we'll have to prioritize diplomacy that ensures that there is sustainable peace and conflict resolution in the whole of the Red Sea basin, aside from the whole of Middle East, where the problem started in the Straits of Hormuz.
The biggest immediate concern for East Africa is energy. Oil tankers delaying their transit or taking the long route around Africa mean higher landing costs at regional ports. Higher freight fees and rising crude oil prices, in turn, mean higher pump prices. Analysts say that strategic fuel reserves will cushion immediate stock levels, but extended delays could test the region's resilience. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN.
We're now joined in studio by our Somalia correspondent, Mohammed Kahie, who has been closely watching these developments. Mohammed, it's good to have you with us here in Nairobi. Talk to us about these Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, how they've changed the security landscape in Somalia and also impacted business at the country's port of Mogadishu.
Thank you, Peninah. Of course, Houthi attacks in the Red Sea have significantly reshaped Somalia's security environment, because the country, as you know, sits along this strategic waterway in the Red Sea and the Gulf. There is a concern that the conflict or what Houthis are doing can spill over to other part of Somalia, which is across the border. So there's also renewed piracy threat, of course, of Somalia also has complicated the security picture with commercial vessels facing risks, and both pirate groups and wider, Red Sea area. But ports have remained open and continue to handle Somalia imports, which is very important following. But business have faced higher insurance cost, which has forced them to shipping costs due to increased war risk insurance premiums and high freight charges for vessels operating near this Red Sea, which is a very, very strategic waterway for countries bordering these waterways like Somalia. And yeah, of course, there are increased international naval forces patrol at these routes coming from the international countries coalition, which before were in Yemen. And this is now becoming a concern that countries like Somalia, which are bordering the Red Sea, and also, of course, the other side, there's also Sudan, there's Eritrea. There might be some attacks, targeting these bordering countries, which are providing, bases, so to speak, for international naval forces patrolling this due to this renewed escalating tensions at the Red Sea by the Houthis here.
And let's talk a little bit more about some of those concerns. I know that you've been speaking to Somali authorities and experts. Just how concerned are they about this escalating maritime insecurity in the Red Sea?
Well, the Somali government is deeply, deeply concerned. Just yesterday, there was a two-day national maritime security conference, first of its time, has concluded, where the president was there. And one of the issues that was deeply discussed and raised was how Somalia will mitigate impacts of coming from choke points, like of course there was Strait of Hormuz, which is ongoing on, and the one at the Red Sea, and how Somalia can mitigate such kind of impacts coming from that. And of course, to add on that, now that Somalia is trying to consider that now the arms embargo has been lifted, it's trying to consider strengthening its Navy and Coast Guard. Just this week, there was Somalia's defense minister delegation, led by the defense minister, was at the Pakistan, signing agreements on training the Navy and the Air Force. And of course, there's this discussion whereby Somalia will acquire the joint venture between Chinese and the Pakistani JF-17 to strengthen Somalia's Air Force. So there's this, on one way side, Somalia trying to strengthen its naval forces and the Air Force, and also looking into ending these tensions through negotiations, because a country like Somalia, which imports everything, it cannot afford to continue having such kind of tensions just at its doorstep.
Right.
Yeah.
You did mention, of course, some of the impacts on businesses. Even though the port continues to operate, we have, you talked about rising insurance costs, but talk to us about foreign aid, because Somalia is very dependent on that. Has there been any impact so far on it?
Yes, of course, yeah, as you said, Somalia heavily depends on foreign aid because of the economic situation of the country, and also recurrent climate shocks in the country, like drought and flooding. And now that, of course, there are a lot of humanitarian shipping that are coming into the country. They have not been impacted, but there was a little bit slower reaching the people who are impacted. We're talking about right now the latest statistics from World Food Program, which is about 6.5 million people being impacted. So you can understand when humanitarian supplies reaching those people is becoming very, very slow and late and becoming more expensive. So and of course, we can add on that and how global funding cuts also has impacted the humanitarian situation in Somalia. So all these issues are now becoming very, very concerned for just not only for the government, but also the humanitarian agencies working in Somalia.
And the triple effect, of course, is being felt by the people on the ground. How have the livelihoods of the Somalis changed?
Well, definitely the livelihood, normal livelihood of the citizens have been impacted. We're talking about before, for example, a liter of oil or petrol used to cost 0.6 to 0.7 before these tensions rising from Strait of Hormuz to now Red Sea. Now it's cost about 1.5 per liter. Same applies to cooking gas. It was about $18 at 10 kg. Now it's about 25. The same applies to food like rice, sugar, and so these Somali homesteads are now feeling the pinch of what is happening globally, which directly impact them, especially at the Red Sea. And many people, Somalis, when you talk to them, they are more concerned on the Red Sea than what is happening there. So because it has first direct impact on them.
Right. Oh, Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us. Mohammed Kaye with me here in studio. Now in Nigeria, the country says it has rescued more than 300 people abducted in separate attacks in what authorities describe as the country's largest single-day rescue operation. The victims were rescued inside Kainji Lake National Park Forest, an area long used as a hideout by armed groups. This sprawling forest spans two states, Niger and Kwara. A presidential spokesperson said among those freed are 163 residents taken during a deadly raid on a village in Kwara State earlier this year. Another 145 captives were from Niger State. Kidnapping for ransom remains one of Nigeria's most serious security challenges, fueled by local bandits and extremist groups operating across the country's north and central regions. The latest rescue comes as the government faces pressure to curb violence and restore security in areas with little state presence. And still in the country, President Bola Tinubu has approved pay rises of up to 80% for members of the armed forces effective September 1st. The presidency says this is a move aimed at boosting troop welfare as the country battles insurgency, banditry and kidnappings. Insurgents, including Boko Haram and ISWAP, continue to stage attacks in the northeast, while armed gangs, known locally as bandits, operate across parts of the northwest. Tinubu says his administration will continue to prioritize troop welfare and equip the armed forces with weapons and technology needed to tackle these security threats. Now, that pay rise comes as Nigeria is recruiting 28,000 additional soldiers to boost its military strength and capabilities. President Bola Tinubu has also approved the increase of its army divisions from 8 to 12. These formations comprise between 7,000 to 22,000 personnel commanded by a major general. Retired soldiers say it's a step in the right direction as the country continues to battle a decade-long insurgency and other security challenges. CGTN's Tessem Akende has more details.
Emmanuel Longs joined the Nigerian Army in 1985 and retired as a master warrant officer in 2020. He says the country's security challenges are multifaceted and increasing army divisions and recruiting more personnel will help in addressing them.
Quick response to any emergency calls. Any emergency calls, that's his aim. Another point is for quick deployment. On daily basis, they kill soldiers. And that 28,000 will not do. In fact, I will advise the president to add more. It is a good step, a very good step.
Nigeria has been battling several security challenges like the insurgency that started in 2009, clashes between farmers and herders, and militancy in its oil-rich Delta region. The United Nations says more than 35,000 lives have been lost as a result, and more than 2 million people have been displaced. Some retired military personnel say the armed forces have done a lot in addressing the issue of insecurity. Other countries in West Africa, such as Niger, Chad and Burkina Faso, have also been contending with similar problems, with Nigeria supporting peacekeeping operations in those countries. According to Global Firepower Index, Nigeria ranks third in military strength in Africa with about 280,000 personnel, next only to Egypt and Algeria on the continent. Retired soldiers believe having new army divisions and recruiting more personnel for the army will also lead to increased support in regional peace.
We are the best Nigerian soldiers on ground, both in Nigeria and abroad, African countries. Liberia, Sierra Leone, Somalia, GTF, all these areas are participating in those operations. So the best thing I would want Nigeria to do is, please, they should do their best.
Security experts say the increase in divisions and personnel numbers is good, but say issues around welfare of troops and improved armory should also be addressed.
If you increase the number of soldiers without sufficient training and reasonable welfare package, it will be counterproductive. So you must, because the enemy we are confronting is not coming with den guns. They are coming with sophisticated automated rifles. So the military that will subdue and diminish them must be more equipped.
Authorities say the government is taking the welfare of troops seriously, with Defense Minister Christopher Musa pledging that the pay rise will soon be effected for personnel in the armed forces. President Bola Tinubu has also promised continued support, modern equipment and local manufacture of arms for the armed forces. Tessem Akende, CGTN Jos.
For more, let's bring in Oluwale Ojewale, Regional Coordinator for Central Africa at the Institute for Security Studies. He joins us via Zoom from Dakar. Mr. Ojewale, thank you very much for your time. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has approved an increase in salaries for the military. What do you make of these developments at a time when Nigeria is facing a wave of insurgencies?
Thank you so much for having me. I will start on the note that this is long overdue. The military is extremely stretched. They have even started carrying out what I would consider as policing duty, anti-kidnapping, even responding to riots, like we saw in the EndSARS riots in the 2020. these are some of the duties that should not be within their remits. And when you compare these with global standards, the earning is extremely low. A private in Nigeria earns about $64. That can't even take him home. And he signed off to pay the supreme sacrifice if the need be, and he will have to leave family behind. The implication of this is that the morale is low, the motivation is not there. You are almost thinking like, if I die now, I die for nothing, like Fela Anikulapo would sing in those days. So I think this is going to boost the morale. And the government should even do far better than this, because most people in Nigeria, most businesses are operating because these people are putting their lives on the line, and politicians are earning crazy salary compared to the people that are doing the job of even putting the country and making the country secure. So this is a welcome development, and the government should do better.
So that pay rise comes as Nigeria is also recruiting 28,000 additional soldiers to boost its military strength and capabilities. But is this enough to bolster the response against security challenges?
This is good in the immediate term, but the warfare has transformed, globally, in the last 3 years, from the Russia war in Ukraine to Middle East crisis, Sudan, Congo, and elsewhere, that what is driving military capability now is technology. So the creation of additional brigades, the creation of, the purported interest to recruit more soldiers, to keep the boot on the ground, to swell the boot on the ground, it is good. But I think there is a need for commensurate investment in modern armament technology to be able to help them to really do the work. Because the idea now in warfare is that you deploy technology to reduce your human casualty. And the two must go together if Nigeria really wants to win the war against terror.
And looking at the country's budget, what implications will these events have? Can the country afford it?
As a Nigerian and as a professional, I'm not happy that in the last decade, defense has been taking away a huge amount of money that is supposed to be devoted to education, public health, agriculture, housing, research, and other critical areas of societal development. But security trumps everything. I think the point is that the government needs to take decisive steps to make that critical investment that will make them to be able to degrade these terrorist and armed groups significantly, so that then the resources can now be directed towards other areas of the society where the state needs to make critical investment. I'm saying that to underscore the fact that it's an additional strain, but the nation has a serious task at hand to defeat terrorism. And that is the reason why we can't really make so much of criticism out of these efforts. But what we need to see is that all these resources do not become conduit pipe for defense corruption, as we have seen in some years past.
All right, we appreciate those insights. Thank you very much for joining us. Oluwole Ojowale live for us there in Dakar. South Africa is calling for continent-wide talks on migration as it faces growing diplomatic tensions with other African countries over anti-immigration protests. The government says irregular migration is an African challenge, not one unique to South Africa. It wants the African Union to focus on the root causes driving migration across the continent, even though the AU recently blocked a proposal to discuss the tensions at its next coordination meeting in October. South Africa opposed the meeting, saying it would be singled out without addressing the broader crisis. Regional leaders drawn from the Southern African Development Community will now address the issue at a crucial summit in Durban later this month. Countries expected at those talks include Malawi, Mozambique and Zimbabwe, nations which have repatriated thousands of their nationals from South Africa.
What we are disagreeing with is to isolate it and make it a South Africa phenomenon. We are also cooperating with the African People's Human Rights Commission on the matter. They will also be soon visiting South Africa, and we will be responding, cooperating with them with regards to this issue that is on the table, which is the appropriate organ of the AU. But to take it to the Executive Council, to the summit, it will not be an ideal platform, because the agenda will be very clear to just name and shame South Africa.
The Tanzania-Zambia Railway has marked 50 years of operation. A commemorative event in Zambia's capital, Lusaka, brought together nearly 200 guests, including senior officials from China, Zambia and Tanzania, alongside former and current Tazara employees. Staff who made outstanding contributions over the decades were honored. Since beginning operations in 1976, the Tazara Railway has been a key transport corridor supporting trade and economic growth across Southern Africa. As China, Tanzania and Zambia push forward plans to revitalize the railway, Tazara Managing Director Bruno Chingandu says the modernization project will strengthen regional connectivity and help advance the African continental free trade area.
It is a very good facilitator for the African Free Trade Agreement. That African Free Trade Agreement will succeed only if the transportation is enhanced. And Tazara will provide that, especially after the concessioning of the Tazara and after the rehabilitation of the line. We see Tazara playing a major role in facilitating the African Free Trade Agreement.
For commuters in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, heavy traffic is a frustrating daily trial. But for a group of young acrobats, congested intersections have become a lifeline. Every time the lights turn red, they turn the road into open-air stages, transforming the gridlock into income. CGTN's Caroline B has the details.
At one of Nairobi's busiest intersections, every red light is showtime. As traffic stops, a team of acrobats races into the road. Flipping, juggling and balancing before the lights change again. For motorists, it's a brief distraction. For the performers, it's how they make a living.
Normally we were doing these acrobatics in theaters and in hotels, but then when COVID came, it was not possible to do an event in a place where people are closed inside. So that's when the idea of doing street performance came up.
What began as a response to the pandemic has become a daily routine. The performers use the junction not only to earn money, but also to attract booking events.
When we come here, at least at the end of the day, you get something that can sustain you for either for tomorrow or Mojua. So because we have families also, and our families also depend on what we get. So, and also here is like an office, because people come and then they say, oh, we like what you guys are doing. Can you come to our event?
But not every performance is a sure thing.
Sometimes we come here to perform, maybe there is a rainy season, we can't perform during rainy season. Sometimes we come here, we can't perform because there is no traffic lights. So I will go, if I get another job, I'll go and work for it.
On a slow day, the group may earn just a few dollars. On a good day, they can make enough to support several families. But every coin comes with the danger of speeding traffic.
The biggest risk is cars and motorbikes, because you need to be very, very sharp, because there are some drivers, they are not keen, some they are drunkard.
As the traffic light turns green, the performers clear the road and wait for another chance. In a city where congestion is often a source of frustration, these acrobats have transformed every delay into an opportunity, proving that resilience can thrive anywhere. Caroline B, CGTN.
Kenya's Nairobi Securities Exchange is creating East Africa's first AI-focused ETF, which is set to be offered to investors before year-end, according to its CEO, Frank Mwiti. The Nairobi market attracts a sizable proportion of foreign equity investors, given its profitable banking sector and telecoms operator Safaricom, but it does not currently offer exposure to AI stocks. Mwiti says companies like Microsoft, Anthropic and OpenAI could be used as references for the ETF. This comes as the AI boom drives stock markets to record highs, but the surge has stoked concerns about a bubble that could drag world stocks down sharply if it pops. Zimbabwe's massive debt could be eased significantly after the United Kingdom and France agreed to be a part of a newly established debt consultative group and the Zimbabwe Structured Dialogue Platform. Both European nations are set to co-chair the DCG, according to Zimbabwe's Finance Ministry. The ministry lauded the move as pivotal in Zimbabwe's efforts to resolve its debt issues, noting that it would restore confidence in the Southern African country's economic reform policies. Primarily, the DCG would handle Zimbabwe's $2.7 billion arrears clearance and debt restructuring framework, which has been designed to restore the nation's debt sustainability and rebuild confidence among international financial institutions and development partners. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe is pushing ahead with plans to move up the electric vehicle battery value chain by processing its lithium at home rather than exporting raw materials. The country has frozen exports of raw lithium ahead of a full ban in 2027. Ahead of the ban, the country commissioned its first lithium sulfate processing plant early this year. CGTN's Faremo Kutuya reports.
Sitting atop Africa's largest lithium reserves, Zimbabwe is betting that the future of the white mineral lies not in the exporting of raw materials, but in processing them at home. The Southern African nation has adopted a hard line on the export of unprocessed minerals as it seeks to capture more value from a sector critical to the global energy transition.
Zimbabwe is acclaimed for high deposits of critical minerals, and for a long time was a renowned source of raw minerals for other global industries, whilst our own became stagnant and antiquated. We have said, not anymore. These days, where consignments leave our borders, declared simply as ore or concentrates, meanwhile containing valuable and rare earth minerals, are over.
Zimbabwe banned exports of raw lithium ore in late 2022 and plans to halt exports of lithium concentrates from January 2027. A temporary suspension imposed earlier this year, together with the commissioning of the country's first lithium sulfate processing plant at the Chinese-owned Prospect Lithium Zimbabwe mine, is already beginning to reshape the sector.
We've seen by mid-year export of lithium in terms of export receipts has gone up by 230% to sit at around $782 million by mid-year.
Analysts say the benefits extend beyond export revenues, helping position Zimbabwe as a strategic player in the global green transition and electric vehicle battery supply chain.
When you are going into industrialization, you are creating white-collar jobs and also specialized jobs. You need the scientists, you need the engineers, you need also other professionals from the commercial side. And it's already happening, but also beyond jobs, impacting the communities. So when you are having value addition beneficiation, it's not happening in towns. It's happening in the rural areas. So for example, when you go to Goromonte where you have a lithium plant, it's no longer the same. It's actually advancing into a town.
Another Chinese-owned mine, Bikita Minerals, is in the process of constructing the country's second lithium sulfate plant. Going forward, the thrust will be to ensure that processing capacity is scaled up fast enough to keep pace with rising production. Faremo Kutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Tullow Oil says its business in Ghana is helping drive a financial turnaround after years of heavy debt. The improvement of oil production and farmer crude prices are improving cash flow. But investors are concerned whether Ghana's government is making progress in paying hundreds of millions of dollars it owes the company. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
According to Tullow Oil, its operations in Ghana are delivering one of the company's strongest performances in years. Production from the Jubilee and 10 oil fields averaged more than 43,000 barrels of oil equivalents a day during the first 5 months of the year. Combined with stronger oil prices, that has helped keep Tullow on track to generate healthy cash flow this year. Analysts say the results suggest the company's turnaround strategy is gaining momentum. Earlier this year, Tullow refinanced its debt, pushing major repayments to 2028 and 2030, giving it more financial breathing room after years of pressure. But one challenge remains. Tullow has not indicated that the government of Ghana has fully settled outstanding payments that were estimated at about $225 million earlier this year. Those delayed payments for gas sales, cash calls and development costs have continued to weigh on the business, although both sides say they are working on a more reliable payment system. For investors, the update is an encouraging sign that Ghana's offshore oil fields can still generate strong returns when prices are favorable. But it also highlights a reality facing the industry today, as analysts believe strong production alone is no longer enough. Financial discipline, stable oil prices, and timely government payments are becoming just as important in determining whether oil remains an attractive investment. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
This is Africa Live. Coming up in sports. FIFA apologizes and rallies behind besieged President Gianni Infantino after crisis meeting in Morocco. We start in Morocco, where FIFA has apologized to all member associations for mistakes made over the abandoned proposal to sell commercial rights linked to the World Cup. FIFA also rallied behind its under-fire president Gianni Infantino at a crisis meeting held in Rabat on Wednesday. In a statement released after the meeting, the world governing body said its leadership had reaffirmed its full support for Infantino. It also acknowledged the handling of the withdrawn FIFA Forward Enterprise